Welcome everybody to another video review. So I'd like to get back to talking about some of the statues. I know I've been doing board games for quite a bit, so I want to sort of intersperse my videos with a few going back to my statues, which is where I kind of started. So I've been meaning to do this one for a while, and I have actually two versions of this painted by two different artists. So this is the Wolverine as a Logan resin statue. This was put out quite a few years ago by Narin, who is normally famous for predators and aliens, but occasionally he will move out of his comfort zone, so to speak, and show you why he is an amazing sculptor and not just aliens and predators all the time. Now, of course, I would be hard put to find anyone, to think of anyone better than him for aliens and predators. But some of these pieces which he has done outside of that, which includes, of course, this piece here, the Logan, but he's also done Azog from the Hobbit movies. He's done the Crow, and he's done a pretty mean Arnold as part of a Predator 1 diorama, which I will be reviewing in the future, which shows that he's just an amazing sculptor, and you know, he's spectacular in a lot of things. This is considered one of the best Wolverine statues, or best Logan statues. Now, the distinction between Wolverine and Logan is a little bit artificial. Obviously, it's the same person. In general, my understanding is that Wolverine is when we have the character in costume, whether the yellow tiger stripe or whether the brown. Whereas without the mask, sort of without the costume, then it's more appropriately considered Logan. But this is certainly one of the more famous ones. It's a classic. A lot of people, most people who collect Wolverine statues or who are into garage kits know of this. So, first, just to kind of go over the magnificent sculpture, he has a very simple rocky base. Now, the cool thing about this, again, is that he comes as a resin kit, which means that different artists and different kit builders can do whatever they want with this. This particular masterpiece was done by Dunaway, again, who is, normally more well known for predators and aliens, although he can do anything really actually very, very well. But his reputation sort of is in the alien predator realm. So again, you can start off pretty simple, and then you can add on and make it as custom or as complicated as you want, which is sort of the advantage of these custom resin kits. Is there's a lot of versions, a lot of variations, and you're kind of limited only by the imagination of the painter and the commissioner. So we start off with a nice, simple, rocky base in this case, and then this is the Wolverine plaque, which is included with the kit. Just kind of looking around it here, pretty nice. And then there's a few things to note. I mean, first, of course, is the brilliance of the sculpt, and then the second is the exemplary work done by Joe in bringing that sculpt to life. The two always have to work together. So here, you have to look at the way Narin sculpts his work, and just sort of looking at the detail and the shading of the shoes and the buckles. The pants especially are pretty remarkable in the sense that, when you go up close and personal, and I will do a flash review of this at the very end in one of the sections, I mean, you can kind of see the texture of it. And I mentioned this in my sideshow Battle Damage Terminator bust review, where you sculpt so well that if you didn't touch it, you would swear to God it was real fabric. And the same thing kind of goes here. You can see the texture of the pants, you can see the stitch lines, all of these things, just amazing. Like here, let me go to the back. Look at the detail here, the pockets, the belt, the wrinkles of the pants, the highlights. So, Joe did all of the airbrush work to bring it to life, to kind of bring out all of those wrinkles, all that texture. But the sculpt, of course, was there to begin with. Excuse me. And you can see the wife beater t-shirt right here. Now, taking a step back, let's take a look at, sort of what I wanted. So this was one of the first Logan kits actually released. I was one of the first people to get it from Narin. And I sent it to Joe Dunaway to paint up, and his was, I think, one of the very first paint jobs. So, this had sort of in my opinion, from memory, it has the distinction of being the first fully built and painted Logan from Narin. And so when I gave this project to him, there wasn't a whole lot of, customization. There wasn't a lot of requests. I just sort of wanted him built up, no frills, just paint him up. Let's see what this guy looks like. And Joe did an amazing job with that. So that being said, he spent a lot of time just sort of working on the flesh tones, the depth of shading, and if you look really closely, you can kind of get just a slight hint of that. It's really hard to do and to capture on video, especially on just an iPhone, even if it's an iPhone X, especially with sort of the lighting. But I don't think you would see this effect at all under flash. It just washes out all that subtlety. So I'm sort of trying to kind of hover over it, kind of show you, and hopefully you can get a glimpse of the depth of the work he did. Again, he and I talked about this. If you just look at it from afar or you snap photos of it with flash on, it just sort of looks a little bit too clean, like maybe he's like a baby, kind of pinkish. But when you go real close, you kind of get an idea of all the different layerings that Joe put in. And I think it's a remarkable job just because this is not translucent resin. And as you guys know, translucent resin is something that you can use to mimic actually silicon flesh. And for Joe to actually pull off this flesh effect, this sense of depth, the kind of the vein work here that I'm going to show you, for him to be able to do all of that to that level of detail without translucent resin is actually pretty remarkable. So hopefully you do get an appreciation of how beautiful that skin looks, which can only really be seen up close and personal in real life. But hopefully just me hovering over it, you can kind of get an idea of the work that went into the flesh tones. Here's the front part. So it's actually, really remarkable. And the idea of this is, this is not him after battle, not him after getting beaten up. It's just kind of him, pristine, Logan, munching a cigar. Take a look here at his face. This is one head. He comes with two heads and an alternate arm, which I will show. And a wife beater t-shirt. Okay, nice and white. And so the overall effect is really, really nice. Now, a few things. What does he come with? What does he not come with? He comes with two heads, one head with him with a cigar, and then two right arms, one arm with the blades extended, and the other arm with him holding a cigar. So you have a couple ways you can pose this guy. You can actually change heads with no problems, both arms extended, or you can change the arm holding a cigar. Now, obviously, it would be ridiculous to have him munch a cigar and then hold a cigar. So the one that really makes sense would be to have the other head without the cigar and then the arm holding a cigar. And I'll go through all of those in different sections. the claws that come with him are resin. And while Joe did a really nice job painting it up, it just looks like it's resin. And again, we did this many, many years ago before this kit became truly famous and famous for its customization. And so later on, I had the opportunity actually to work with John Allred, and he actually put these metal claws in there for me. So that was really, really nice work. So these claws do come extra, okay? They're actually stainless steel. And then also the dog tags are real metal, real tags. They also come extra from John Allred. And I think he got them from another source. So that's not part of the original kit or the original paint job. I had that, improved later on. Now of note, when you put them together, of course, everything has to be sort of sanded and put together. They come in parts, they come apart. And it was a little bit lucky because every modeler builds them a little bit differently. And you can see here, only a millimeter separated that last claw from the pants. So it came pretty close because I didn't ship the entire statue to John to do this. I just shipped the arms. And so he had to do kind of his best guess, the natural curvature of the blades coming out. And as it happened, it just missed the legs, which is really nice. So got a little bit lucky there, okay, in terms of how it's normally done. So again, sort of talked about the greatness of the sculpt. Again, you can see all of the detail, the veins, the musculature, the wrinkles of the t-shirt around the chest, the hint of the hair over his chest, the veins along the neck, and the musculature there. I mean, this is just a fantastic sculpt overall of Logan. After all these years, it's still, I think, the class, in a separate class by itself, still an amazing thing. A combination of the fabric sculpt, and then, of course, the musculature and the anatomy and the skin all put together. And Joe did an amazing job kind of bring all of that to life with his, with his airbrush and his layers. So now, you got one with displaying it. Here's the second head right on over here, okay? Very different head. And Narin thoughtfully included a base for his extra head. He started doing this well before Sideshow did. And it's very much appreciated because, again, I talked about some of my other videos. You have all these heads floating around. You're trying to change up the display option where there's nowhere to put them. It's, it's just sort of infuriating. It's kind of tough. So it's very nice that Narin had the forethought to put a little tiny display stand. So I got an extra dog tag for this guy right here. So technically what you can do is you can actually just take this head right off, just like that, okay? It's put on and keyed very, very nicely by Narin. And of course, when Joe built him up, he also sanded everything down to make sure that it fits very nicely. And then you take this head and you lift it up and you put it right here like so. Okay? And then of course the spare head down here, you can put in its section right here. So now you have him on the base. So this look works as well. So instead of him chewing his cigar, you now have him just looking at you with this intense stare. Again, a very, very unique take on Logan. Sort of this hyper-realistic version of him. Very, very thick eyebrows. It kind of shows you his the shadow of his beard, the sideburns. So it's very, very nice. And this head is very different, from the other head. He's looking in a different way. His mouth is closed. Again, trying to get close and trying to kind of show you some of Joe's amazing work here. It really brings depth and life, okay, to that, to the sculpt. So here we have it, just sort of looking at you. I'm going to back up, okay. Get the back right here. So that's of him just sort of looking at you, okay? Claws extended. Now, you can also take this arm off. I'm gonna gently do that. Again, you can see it's keyed and pinned very nicely. We're gonna layer that gently down here. And this is a little bit tricky. I'm gonna try to do it in one shot. I'm not sure if I can without screwing this up. We're gonna get the other arm. It's holding the cigar, okay? You're not gonna see it quite yet. So here we go. This is the other arm. And that cigar is very, very loosely held. And we're gonna try to see if I can put it on without it dropping. It's gonna be tricky with one hand. So here we go. I'm gonna gently turn him so I can see what I'm doing. Again, you can see that's keyed very nicely. All right, here we go. Hopefully it doesn't fall. There you go. So this is the other effect. This is the other hand, kind of casually holding the cigar. So instead of the cigar being in the mouth right here, he's actually holding it. So one claw set is unsheathed. And the other one is just kind of casually holding a cigar. Adds a little bit of swagger, you know, to the statue. And this is what he's supposed to look like. So it kind of gives you a very different take on the character, a very different feel, okay, when you see that. So that's really nice. Yeah, close up here, close up here. Ah, there you go, see, he fell. So I kind of caught that in real time. In reality, just to make sure that doesn't really happen, I should just essentially glue it. But luckily, this is a very hardy cigar. It's dropped many times, hasn't cracked yet. That's kind of one of the problems, by the way, with this thing, is that the way it is, the gap is just not wide enough. And obviously Joe didn't want to make it too loose, so he wouldn't hold it. But at the same time, the gap is a little bit too tight. And so when the cigar gets put in, it's really difficult to hold it in place. And so sometimes it will drop just by itself. So that makes it a little bit tricky. You have to just sort of gently squeeze it in, and it doesn't work very well. So I think eventually what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sort of put a little tiny touch of glue and just hold it here and just make it a permanent part. Because again, it doesn't really look good with his fingers without that. Okay, so there you have it. But I'm glad I got a little bit of a shot of him actually holding it, so you can kind of get an idea of what he's supposed to look like. I think if I let that go, you can see again that that's what it's supposed to look like. Here it goes. So again, there you go again. So annoying. Okay, so I'm gonna stop trying that. So anyways, you get the idea. Pretty much, that's what he's supposed to be holding the cigar. So in terms of, again, the overall thoughts, it's a remarkable sculpt, a remarkable paint job. I think having the black background with the overhead lights does do a pretty good job bringing out all that vein work and all that depth in the paint. So I'm glad about that. I think under harsh, bright light, you wash out so much of the detail, the freckles and the skin shading. But here, I think you really do get to appreciate that quite a bit more. So definitely very good. The only downside again is sort of the placement of the cigar. That's no big deal. I'll glue that and he's good. So let me back up a little bit to get an idea of what he looks like. So there's basically two different heads and two different poses with very, very different kind of, emotional, how can I say it, impression that the statue gives. Now the downside is that while you can make a nice little base for the other head, which is appreciated, you can't really make an additional base for the arm. It's a little bit silly. And so you just have to put the arm in a safe place. There's really no good way of doing that. But, you know, it's a downside of it, unfortunately. But I do like the fact that he gives you that other arm, because it does give you such a different feeling, and it just gives you a different display option. But it does make kind of figuring out what to do with this arm sort of a challenge. All right, so this is, again, Logan by Narin, painted by the great Joe Dunaway. And then I'm going to do another section with the flash on to try to show a little bit more of the detail and see if that adds anything to the equation. And I'll do it with the cigar in place. Okay, let's go on to the next section. Okay, so we're back. This time I've glued the cigar to the hand so it doesn't embarrassingly fall down. This is with the flash on. So let me back out first. Again, you can kind of see him in all his glory, standing on his rock base, kind of casually holding his cigar with one hand while the claws are unsheathed, ready for action. Let's go a little bit close. Let's take a look at the eyes work now. You can really appreciate that, whereas before you really couldn't. Here's some of the shading he did on the chest hair, the veins of the neck, the beard. So hopefully you can kind of appreciate both the sculpt and the paint job that went into this. Here's the arms, the flesh work, the skin tones. Again, doesn't quite show the depth that it does within the natural lighting, but still pretty good. Here's the glint of the metal. Here we go here. There's that wife beater t-shirt. Here's the tags. Here's the cigar. The other arm. Moving back. Look at the wonderful detail of the pants. And of course the base. Let's not forget the cowboy boots. Very nice. And then we'll take a look at the other head. Again, the eyes. He's sort of squinting a little bit, so without flash, you can't really appreciate the eyes very well. Here you go here. Again, just kind of interesting how different the two faces are, you know? It's hard to believe they're the same face, but I guess if he's chewing on a cigar and frowning, it could be the same guy. Maybe this is him, one shot. Here's the other. And then finally, of course, which is a little bit awkward, here's the arm. Kind of get the veins on the back here. And how you key it in, just like that. I don't know, it's hard to decide which pose I like more. I think I've always been a little bit partial to this particular pose, just because from just, I guess, a purely logistical point of view, it's simpler. You want to get the arm with the, you know, the more delicate piece kind of in display. It's a little bit easier to store this, I suppose, than that. I just kind of like the attitude, you know, with him sort of looking at you, relaxed, with that little cigar casually balanced on his fingertips. I just like the attitude of that a little bit more. Whereas the one with him just sort of, you know, both claws extended with chewing the cigar in his mouth, that's a very different look. And that's awesome too, but I just kind of like this one for some reason. So the two poses, I think this is the one I definitely prefer. All right, well anyways, hope you enjoyed this little review of my Logan statue painted by Joe Dunaway. Again, this was one of the first paint jobs of this kit. He did a spectacular job like he always does. And this is, I think, one of the few that's just not embellished, meaning, no blood, nothing fancy, nothing crazy, just a great paint job of a great sculpt. And you'll see that once this kit became more well known and people started entering in Wonderfest and other competitions, it became a very, very kind of powerful foundation for customization. And for my next review, you're gonna kind of see what a customized, Wolverine or Logan looks like based on, again, the foundation of this magnificent kit. So until then, take care.